This story is called The First Thing the Baby Did Wrong. It's by Donald Barthelme. First thing the baby did wrong was to tear pages out of her books. So we made a rule that each time she tore a page out of a book, she had to stay alone in her room for 4 hours behind the closed door. She was tearing about a page a day in the beginning, and the rule worked fairly well, although the crying and the screaming from behind the closed door were unnerving. We reasoned that that was the price you had to pay, or part of the price you had to pay. But then, as her grip improved, she got to tearing out 2 pages at a time, which meant 8 hours alone in her room, behind the closed door, which just doubled the annoyance for everybody, but she wouldn't quit doing it. And then as time went on, we began getting days when she tore out 3 or 4 pages, which put her alone in her room for as much as 16 hours at a stretch, interfering with normal feeding and worrying my wife. But I felt that if you made a rule, you had to stick to it and had to be consistent, otherwise they get the wrong idea. She was about 14 months old or 15 months old at that point. Often, of course, she'd go to sleep after an hour or so of yelling. That was a mercy. Her room was very nice, with nice wooden rocking horse and practically 100 dolls and stuffed animals. Lots of things to do in that room if you used your time wisely. Puzzles and things. Unfortunately, sometimes when we opened the door, we'd find that she'd torn more pages out of more books while she was inside, and these pages had to be added to the total, in fairness. The baby's name was Born Dancin'. We gave the baby some of our wine, red, whites, and blue, and spoke seriously to her, but it didn't do any good. I must say she got real clever. You'd come up to her where she was playing on the floor in those rare times when she was out of her room, and there'd be a book there, open, beside her, and you'd inspect it, and it would look perfectly all right. And then you'd look closely, and you'd find a page that had one little corner torn. Could easily pass for ordinary wear and tear, but I knew what she'd done. She'd torn off this little corner, swallowed it. So that had to count, and it did. They will go to any lengths to thwart you. My wife said that maybe we were being too rigid and the baby was losing weight, but I pointed out to her that the baby had a long life to live and had to live in a world with others, had to live in a world where there were many, many rules. And if you couldn't learn to play by the rules, you were going to be left out in the cold with no character, shunned and ostracized by everyone. The longest we ever kept her in a room consecutive was 88 hours, and that ended when my wife took the door off its hinges with a crowbar, even though the baby still owed us 12 hours because she was working off 25 pages. I put the door back on its hinges and added a big lock, one that only opened if you put a magnetic card in the slot. And I kept the card. But things didn't improve. The baby would come out of her room like a bat out of hell and rush to the nearest book, Goodnight Moon or whatever, and begin tearing pages out of it, hand over fist. I mean, there'd be 34 pages of Goodnight Moon on the floor in 10 seconds, plus the covers. I began to get a little worried. When I added up her indebtedness in terms of hours, I could see that she wasn't going to get out of her room until 1992, if that. Also, she was looking pretty wan. She hadn't been to the park in weeks. We had more or less an ethical crisis on our hands. I solved it by declaring that it was all right to tear pages out of books, and moreover, it was all right to have torn pages out of books in the past. That is one of the satisfying things about being a parent. You've got a lot of moves, each one of them good as gold. The baby and I sit happily on the floor, side by side, tearing pages out of books, and sometimes, just for fun, we go out on the street and smash a windshield together.